In this video, you're going to learn 3 things that GCSE English examiners hate and how to avoid them. Number 1 is vagueness. So a lot of students will write things like, this makes the reader have a very emotional response, or they'll say, this creates a powerful impact on the reader. Or they might be slightly better. They might say that this vivid imagery creates a strong feeling of sadness or happiness or whatever. But the problem with this analysis is that even in the best situation there, it's still too vague and general. Now, a rule you need to learn and practice for yourself is the idea that your analysis should be so specific and unique to the exact thing you're writing about, the exact text and the exact part of the text, that the reader can tell what quote you're analysing without reading the quote. So the reader knows, without actually looking at the bit that you're analysing, which part that is. They can tell just from the analysis you're making about it. So you would go from saying, this creates a strong feeling of sadness due to the vivid imagery, to this makes the reader wonder if character A has faced a terrible injustice in their past, creating a sense of sympathy due to the way the writer reinforces the impact of this character's traumatic memories through the repeated use of the sibilants in the quotes X, Y, and Z. This is the kind of specific and detailed analysis that is absolutely unmistakable. You could take those quotes out, you would still know what the student's writing about. That's what examiners actually need, and it's the complete opposite of the vagueness that they see all the time and that they hate. Okay, that's number 1, vagueness. Number 2 is when students are repetitive and boring. Now, the truth is that examiners are not going to spend very long looking at your work. About a minute. They read hundreds of essays every single week, indeed every day, which are the same, which are almost identical, and so they get bored. Now, you want to create an impression. You want to create a positive impact on your reader as quickly as possible so that they form a good first impression of your work. You make an impact on them, and because examiners usually don't change their mind, right? They usually will not change their mind later about your work. Whatever they believe you're capable of in the first paragraph is, to be fair, usually accurate. It's usually what you are capable of throughout. So, if you want to impress the examiner at the start, you need to be perceptive. Perceptive means that you think of things that other students don't. Now, that sounds easy to say, it's not as easy to do. How do you develop that skill of perceptiveness, thinking of ideas and analysis that other students may not think of? Well, one way you can do it in your revision is by practicing analysing the 3rd or 4th idea that occurs to you. So write down a list of ideas for analysis when practicing or revising, but don't analyse the first 2, choose the 3rd or 4th. Analyse those. Those ideas are likely to be the ones you had to really work a bit harder to think of, therefore they're more perceptive, they're less obvious. That makes your analysis more interesting and less obvious as well. That's how you're going to write perceptive analysis that examiners actually want to read, that's interesting, that strikes them, creates a strong impression, breaks up the monotony of marking hundreds of essays. Indeed, it's also one of the main criteria in the mark schemes that you need to use perceptive analysis. Okay, so number 3 is the way you use quotes. Now, examiners hate reading when students just write, this is shown by the quote. They will read that phrase thousands of times a day, and it makes them bored. It shows that you're just doing the same as every other student, maybe therefore getting the same result as every other student, getting an average result, just scraping a pass, etc. Okay, so what do you need to change? Well, what you need to do is not say this is shown by the quote and then give a long quote and then go and analyse it. What you need to do is use a cluster of quotes. Now, a cluster of quotes is when you use 3 or 4 or even more short quotes that may be as short as one word, short quotes that relate to the same topic or theme in the text. You use this cluster of short quotes, and then you have analysis that may zoom in on a certain word, but it will also look at the overall effect of all of them. You might say, for example, if you're writing about an Inspector Calls, you might say, instead of saying this is shown by the quote, then giving a whole quote, you'd say this is shown by Mr. Burling's blathering about port and wine, which illustrates his pretentiousness and desire to fit in with the upper class. And then you go into detailed analysis of perhaps individual words. Port being a very expensive drink, you could then analyse the significance, the connotations of luxury at a time when the working class, like Eva Smith, lived in poverty, or look at the overall effect of the cluster, and actually then give your overall impression that we form on the basis of all of this evidence. And you see, this shows that you're taking evidence from different parts of the text. It shows you have a broad knowledge of the text, and it shows also that you're able to link those things together thematically, and that's a higher level of thinking than just saying this is shown by the quote. So, those are the three things. I hope that was helpful.